Good morning and welcome to WHIO Reports, a community service of News Center 7 and WHIO Radio. I'm Jim Otte. On the program this morning, we're taking a closer look at the presidential election, the role of the Miami Valley in electing the new president. Donald Trump launched the most unconventional campaign in recent memory in 2016, maybe in American history. He managed to take his long-shot campaign all the way to the White House. In the next 30 minutes, we'll examine what happened, why it happened, the role of the state of Ohio in this election, what it means for us in the future. Let's meet our guest now. Dr. Mark Caleb Smith is the Associate Professor of Political Science and Director of the Center for Political Studies at Cedarville University. And my colleague from the newsroom here, reporter Will Garbe of the Dayton Daily News. They've spent the last year literally analyzing what's happened in this election. So, Dr. Smith, thanks for being with us. Why did Donald Trump win the 2016 election?
Wow, if I can answer that, I might win $1 million or something. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting, of course. I think first there's a massive appetite for change. Donald Trump represented change more than any other candidate did. He also had the good fortune of running against Mrs. Clinton, who is sort of the prototypical establishment politician. She also has very difficult time relating to people, very poor popularity ratings. Put those things in a blender, and it makes some sense why Donald Trump could win. But this is such a remarkable, historic election. In some ways, it still doesn't make sense.
I've heard a lot of people describe it as kind of a perfect storm for a very unconventional candidate, campaign, election turnout. Stop me when this sounds familiar. They've all come together here. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say that's correct. I mean, Trump really plugs into the celebrity culture in a way that we haven't seen other presidential candidates do. Presidents have been sort of flirting with celebrity for quite a long time, at least since John F. Kennedy, if we wanted to go back. Trump obviously is a celebrity before he's a politician. That's what makes him very different. I think that certainly helped him. His name recognition helped him. His profile on social media helped him. He was on The Apprentice last year as a network TV star, and so this profile had huge dividends to his campaign.
Will Garbe is with us from the Dayton Daily News. Will, your questions?
Well, Dr. Smith, you had said that if you had all the answers to this, you might as well be a millionaire. You could also have just won the presidency yourself. I suppose a question that I have, though, not so much about what Donald Trump did right. Some things went very wrong for Hillary Clinton toward the end. If you're looking from her perspective, can you talk at all about the impact that some of those factors had on Mrs. Clinton's campaign?
Certainly a couple of things that she was vulnerable on, I think. One is her health. That video of her stumbling outside the 9/11 ceremony, I think, was actually very, very important. It raised issues about her vitality. The other one, of course, is she's just such a long figure in our country. She's been a high-profile politician since the 1990s. And she really hasn't improved much as a politician, if we get really honest about it. She has a hard time relating to people, a hard time connecting to sort of your average voter. Those things crept up on her. Then, of course, there's this hint of corruption that surrounded the Clintons, at least since the 1990s. The WikiLeaks dumps that happened near the end of the campaign, plus the reinvestigation of her email server. We talk about a perfect storm for Trump. In some ways, it was a perfect negative storm for Hillary Clinton.
One of the reasons why I'm so anxious to recount what happened in 2016 is because this potentially has a lot of meaning for us in 2017 and even future presidential elections. I want to go down to the video of what happened during the primary process. This was incredibly crowded. And looking forward, will there ever be a primary session like this, that season where we have, 17 presidential candidates? In hindsight, should those candidates have ganged up on Donald Trump and said, look, we're going to get rid of this guy here first, and then we'll argue amongst ourselves? Or will this set the stage for future primaries where we're going to have 10 or 15 people every time we have a presidential race?
You got some interesting things going on. First of all, there's really no disincentive for running for the presidency and losing. Even if you run and lose, you raise your profile, you raise your speaking fees, you raise your book contract numbers that come up later. You might get a radio show out of it, who knows? So there's really not much of a downside to running and losing, I think, now. Also, of course, they were waiting for someone to attack Trump so that they could benefit. Attacking Trump, though, they thought might actually hurt them because Trump was so popular. And so the goal was to sort of wait for other people to move in to attack him while the people who didn't attack him would benefit from the outcome. And in a way, they all waited for someone else until they waited too long.
The dynamic that was created in this Republican primary season, do you think that has any meaning for future presidential races?
Not necessarily. primary campaigns that sort of wax and wane over time in terms of 3 people, 5 people, 9 people. This one was quite large. I'm not sure we'll see that again necessarily. You might see the parties put in some mechanisms to weed the field out a little bit more quicker, though. I think that could help. Limit the debate stages earlier, maybe even put in some polling benchmarks earlier and just sort of say, you know what, you're out of the campaign. We're just sort of going to treat it like if you don't persist into February or whatever, you're done and we're moving forward.
You mentioned the debates.
Yeah.
What role did they play in this? I think a lot of people will still remember, though, that some of those questions that came in a CNN-controlled debate, those went to Mrs. Clinton early, at least a few questions.
Right.
Will we have future debates? Will they remain to be very popular, widely viewed? They were this year, last year.
I think we will, probably because they were so popular. I mean, there's an incentive for networks to put them on if they're going to make money off of advertising as it relates to the debates. Donald Trump's celebrity probably drove some of that, though, so we don't really know whether it will be the same. So we have a Democratic set of debates in 2020. Will we see high numbers? I kind of doubt it in some ways. I think they'll stick around, if nothing else, for the entertainment value. The politicians know they get name recognition, they get sort of an ID out of it they wouldn't get otherwise. It's easy publicity, it's cheap publicity. I don't think they're going away.
So you have a billionaire who was famous before he came into politics.
Right.
And his mantra was, okay, we're going to drain the swamp, build the wall. A couple of others, there are about 5 that really, really hit home right away.
Yeah.
And he actually got a kick out of it. I remember, covering early on a rally in Columbus when Donald Trump, this is early in the primary season, 15,000 people showed up. Trump came out and he took a lot of energy from that crowd. And actually it was entertaining. It was intriguing on a couple of policy issues, but not a lot.
Right.
He was funny.
Right.
And people came away from that saying, I did not know he was so entertaining. And now, more than ever, I believe in him as a candidate. Those rallies really made a difference in this.
Clearly they did. Trump is an entertainer, as you said. He's a television personality. He utilized that extraordinarily well. But keep in mind, voters, I think, also are looking for authenticity. And they took those rallies to be authentic. Now, I would probably question that. I don't know how authentic they really were. But when he goes off script, when he says things off cuff, when he's politically incorrect, that resonates with people to think this is an authentic candidate who's saying what he really believes, therefore I can trust that he's telling the truth. I'm not sure that's the best measure of whether he's telling the truth, but people want unpackaged. They want passion. They want authenticity. He delivered those things whether you like him or not.
Well, you had covered some of these events, both Republican and Democrat. Did you notice a difference between the two crowds? What's the vibe, I call it, that's going on in some of these?
Well, sure, certainly. I had the perspective of living in Iowa during the time of this and watching all of these candidates come through and interact with the people in Iowa. And you ask people in Iowa, well, what do you think of Jeb Bush? And they said, well, I've only met him once. And so these folks had different reactions to these different candidates, and it was like nothing you'd ever seen before when Donald Trump comes in and starts getting people excited about this prospect of making America great again, or not even just excited about that, but excited that it's someone new, someone who isn't a Jeb Bush or a Marco Rubio in that. And so you certainly saw a dynamic amongst these candidates, and the dynamic really was, for Donald Trump, something that was so far outside of the traditional that I think people really attached themselves to that, regardless of they agreed 100% with him. I think that they very much liked the fact that he wasn't the other guys.
Take 30 seconds, Doctor, to describe that newness, the new factor here.
Yeah,
you think that was a very big part of this?
No question.
New and different.
Yeah, remember early in the polling, or in the primary season, Ben Carson, Donald Trump, and Carly Fiorina were in the top of the polling. And so you see this appetite for outsiders, no question. Trump fulfills that in the way the other ones don't. He's an outsider, plus he's interesting. It's a pretty good combination.
We'll take a break here. When we come back, we're going to talk more about what the 2016 election has to do with Donald Trump, president now in the White House, and future elections coming 4 years down the road, 8 years down the road. 4 years is not that far away. Stay with us in WHIO Reports. Back in a minute.